Hey, what's going on, crypto people? It is the Crypto Siege with another day in the life and the crazy life. The crazy life that is the digital asset space. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to each and every one of you. Yeah, it's Thursday. It is 6:22 Mexico time, whatever that is. Central. So it's 6:22 Central time. And yeah, I wanted to shoot this quick video. Shout out to Simon Dixon from Bank to the Future. He lays out the recovery plan. You guys are going to get a first chance to really learn who this guy is, who Simon Dixon is, and understand his experience. His experience. This is not just some random dude, but his experience as a securities platform, as someone in the BTC space since 2010. You got to get a firsthand of his experiences, the successes that he's had in the past, with recovery plans. So we're gonna get into that. I'm just look, I got to get ready for dinner. I won't be in here long, but I did want to share this with you and share the video where he's being interviewed, which is on Digital Asset News, so you guys can watch that. It is a gem of a gem. I would watch it to the very end, but at least listen to the first hour of that. You want to get the ins and outs, and it's some very there were some eye openers in reference to Alice Mashinsky. There was some eye openers in reference to a Celsius network that you are going to want to hear, and you are going to want to know for sure. Without question, you're going to want to know this. So I was surprised to hear some of these words coming out of the mouth of Simon Dixon, but the truth is important for sure. And I hesitate to say the truth, but I do want to say it's important to know, to be less in the dark about things. I'll put it to you that way. So, guys, listen, this is your XRP Ripple daily news. In around 0 to 10 freaking minutes, I'm going to get right into this. Before I go over this recovery plan, let's take a listen to Digital Asset News, who did a really, really good job of interviewing Simon Dixon, the Bank to the Future, who has come up with 3 proposals for the Celsius recovery plan. You're going to want to hear about this guy's background and who this dude is.
And it's going to help us understand what this is as far as a Celsius recovery plan. So we're going to go over a lot of things today, so just stick with us. The first thing we're talking about is, who is Simon Dixon? Why is Bank of the Future, his company, even taking part in this? And a little disclaimer. Also, the big question, how do we get Celsius users' money back? I think that's what everybody's here for. Also, we're talking about what have you done so far to try to help Simon and the company. Then we'll talk about what's a bad result, what would you consider a win, and then what's the next step? Because we can talk all we want to, but we got to take action. We got to take action fast, and that's what the plan is. And then we'll finish up with a little final thoughts, mental health, and we're going to take your questions that you submitted to Slido, which we have over 260 or 300 upvoted to the top.
And also, by the way, you're going to get a freaking gem about Jed McCaleb that was an absolute eye-opener. A lot of people always wondering how it is Jed McCaleb keeps going around and no one's touching this dude. First of all, I saw something on Twitter that says, do we have record of where he's selling this XRP? Someone suggested he might be selling it to a federal agency. Yeah, that was on Twitter. Someone suggested that. But you always got to wonder how it is that he seems to get away from stuff. You're going to hear some very, very damning statement from a guy who would know, in Simon Dixon, about Jed McCaleb. You are going to want to hear that. Wow.
Top one. So first one, Simon, first of all, thanks for being here. I know you recently lost a family member. I know it's a very tough time. So thanks for taking the time out to do this. This is going to help a lot of people. I really appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, obviously I really wanted to give this interview to you because I think, we did some interview about 3 months ago Firstly, I just got to say I've got like a lozenge in my mouth. If that makes an annoying noise, my throat is dead. This is not ideal conditions. I've been, mourning the loss of my father, but the DMs just got so heartbreaking that I just needed to do something because I knew I could. So, that's really the situation right now. This is less than ideal. That's really the precursor to this. But many people are asking for interviews, but I wanted to give it to you, Rob, because I think you've been doing the most for the community, and I think it's deserved.
Well, I'm trying, my man. I'm trying. And then also, I just want to say to everybody that we've got 3 screens up here. We had a little issue technical. So you're going to see the video of Simon as he's hanging out in the nice background. And then the audio is coming from a better source. So, Simon, let's get down to it. Your time is valuable. My time's everybody's time is valuable. Who are you? Who is Simon Dixon? And why is Bank of the Future taking part in this? And any disclaimers you want to throw out there before we get going?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, I gave really an overview of me, the past, present, and future of Bitcoin. I was involved in Bitcoin from speaking at the very first Bitcoin conference in the world, writing the first published book in the world to include Bitcoin over a decade ago, Bank to the Future. And before my life kind of went into turmoil recently, I was writing my next book on the future of finance and surviving the Great Depression of the 2020s. And so the reason that I'm here and talking about this right now is because I am a shareholder in Celsius. The company that I co-founded, banktothefuture.com, is the longest standing company in Bitcoin, and it's the world's first crypto securities business. We funded over 100 different companies from Kraken, Bitfinex, Bitstamp, Coinbase, Blockchain.com, Circle, some of the largest names in the industry. And we also did a funding round for Celsius, the Series A. So that was really my first involvement. And what I do want to say in everything that I talk about today, firstly, I'm not actually a lawyer, but I paid tens of millions to lawyers over the years, surviving every single regulatory crackdown that we've had so far in crypto over the last decade. But I'm not actually a lawyer, so you can't take anything as legal advice.
Right.
I'm not a financial and investment advisor. I have done all my qualifications. I used to work in investment banking. I was actually a qualified financial advisor, but I'm no longer registered to give investment or financial advice. So nothing that I say, in my opinions about what I'm saying, it's about purely what do I want for my deposits at Celsius and my shareholding at Celsius. There is going to be tax consequences in what happens here. I'm not a tax advisor, so I just got to say that. Right. And I don't work for Celsius. I was offered a role on the board of Celsius, but I am not a director of Celsius. I'm not an employee of Celsius. I am, I believe, from my understanding, one of the top depositors at Celsius. I've always taught diversification. Approximately 3 years ago, I released a video series on retirementplanb.com where I shared live how I'm investing because I was forecasting a Great Depression. Everyone thought I was crazy back then because the market didn't go into a depression. But I was trying to prepare everybody for inflation, deflation, economic decline, economic growth, bank failure, wars, pandemics, and how to be okay, whatever happens, including crypto and Bitcoin bear markets. So part of how I invest is diversify. And so I try to prepare for all outcomes. And one of my strategies is yield. So I had a percentage of my wealth on Celsius as part of my yield strategy. Right. And I published, the rewards that I was receiving to be transparent about that. And I also own shares in Celsius. So when this disaster happened, I was forecasting a yield and DeFi crackdown. And letting people know that the next boom market from this, after a yield and DeFi crackdown, would probably be a securities boom. And that happened sooner than I thought it would happen. And obviously my deposits were on the line and my shareholder value was on the line. And I knew that I could try and do something about it. And all of a sudden, the direct messages just started coming through and they were heartbreaking. I started to realize that people had...
Again, I think it's important to note that he forecasted the yield and DeFi crackdown, and that would give way to a securities boom. Think about that. Yield and DeFi crackdown to give way to a securities boom. This kind of speaks to Gary Gensler and why he is where he is. Doesn't it?
Actually put their entire life savings in Celsius.
Right.
And people were dependent upon Celsius for their retirement and their financial future. And while I cannot do anything about that, by the end of this, I'd like to really give some tips from someone that's been completely broke, somebody that's lost their life savings and retirement in the past. And I'd like to cover some of that as well. But really the main topic I'd like to cover is what can we do about Celsius? So who I am, I'm a depositor, I'm a shareholder, I've involved in the industry, I deeply care about this industry. I do believe that Bitcoin is going to play a huge role in the future of finance. And I do believe we need an exit from the traditional financial system. I lean more to Bitcoin than alternatives to Bitcoin, but I also diversify in order to prepare for any outcome. And one of the outcomes that I need to prepare for is Bitcoin failure. And so that's one of the outcomes I prepare for. Even though I don't believe it will happen, I always invest in maybe me being wrong.
Gotcha. Okay, so that covers the big stories or the big parts of it. Who's Simon? Why are you guys involved? And a little disclaimer. So now let's get to the bigger question. How do we get the Celsius users' money back? You got a bunch of DMs, I got a bunch of DMs, messages, heartbreaking. And we talk about only investing what you can afford to lose, never leaving too much on any one exchange. We have the rules right there. But people get ahead of themselves. We're human, right? So now we got a lot of people stuck. Simon, how do we do that? What's the plan going forward? So how does this all work out for Celsius users, depending if you got 3% like me on the portfolio of their portfolio on Celsius, or like 100% like some people?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing is we can look back in history. Having been involved in this industry for over a decade, we've been here before. So the first time I experienced this was when I spoke at that first Bitcoin conference. It was sponsored by a company called Mt. Gox. And Mt. Gox had pretty much 70% of all the tradable Bitcoins on their exchange. They tried to get out of, they created a bull market, and they created a bot to try and trade their way out of a hole, because Mt. Gox purchased an exchange from the creator of Ripple. And that exchange was missing 80,000 Bitcoins when Mark Capellas bought it. They then got...
Did you catch that? Jed. Jed. What happened to 80,000 Bitcoins? Did you catch that? Let me play that again.
And Mt. Gox had pretty much 70% of all the tradable Bitcoins on their exchange. They tried to get out of, they created a bull market, and they created a bot to try and trade their way out of a hole, because Mt. Gox purchased an exchange from the creator of Ripple. And that exchange was missing 80,000 Bitcoins when Mark Capellas bought it. They then got hacked, and they were missing a lot of Bitcoin. So essentially, they became...
Like, a lot of people don't know that. I mean, he's publicly stating that this is, again, a guy who was at the first Bitcoin conference in 2010, okay? Funded over 100 crypto companies. This dude said, a lot of us are familiar with the Jed McCaleb, the exchange, Mt. Gox, and that deal, and it being hacked. No one was familiar with the fact that 80,000 Bitcoin was missing just prior to this guy who bought it, who had no idea what he was doing when he bought the exchange. Zero, nada, nothing. And then it went on to get hacked. Interestingly enough, I think it's interesting that 80,000 Bitcoin end up missing from an exchange that Jed McCaleb. So Jed McCaleb was right there. Next, 80,000 Bitcoin is no longer there. And then subsequently, it gets hacked. It gets hacked. Jed McCaleb is running around selling XRP whenever he wants, and not a word or peep, nothing. Nothing. Something fishy about Jed McCaleb. It ain't adding up. 50% burn of the XLM. Why? What was the reason behind it? What was his purpose? He's selling XRP. Who is he selling to? Again, I would love to know if we can track who that XRP that he sells is going to, because there's rumor on the street that it's going to a federal agency. How is it that he's able to walk around and not have any kind of lawsuit or anything thrown his way? How does it end up that 80,000 Bitcoin ends up missing and then no one's looking into the missing Bitcoin or Jed McCaleb? How do you explain that? How do you explain it?
Inadvertently a fractional reserve bank without having a license to do so. And so we've got that experience to go by. What we do know is that they did a few things right and a few things wrong. Some of the things they did right is that they didn't sell the Bitcoin. They kept the Bitcoin. Okay. And it moved into bankruptcy and liquidation. And 8 years later, there is $1 billion of Bitcoin. So it went from being bankrupt to having hugely valuable assets in dollar terms. And it's still at this moment being resolved 8 years later. And a company that I invested into was a small startup at the time called Kraken. And Kraken was the company that put together a plan with the liquidators in order to try and unwind and support all of the depositors in seeing what they could recover and what the financial situation was. So that was wave one. That took us from Bitcoin, up to $1,300 and crashed us right down again to $250. Then we had a sideways market where we tried to reconcile that, and we moved into another one. The other situation that I was directly involved with was we were in a sideways market in 2016, and Bitfinex lost 119,000 Bitcoins as a result of a hack that was recently recovered from the Crocodile of Wall Street. You can follow that story. And the situation there was that they didn't want to follow Mt. Gox. They learned from Mt. Gox. And they put together a plan that we were involved with that we can go a little bit deeper in. Yeah. Where they haircut users, they gave them a token, and that token represented a debt. They traded their way out of the issue. They repaid some of the debt, and people converted it into equity, which later went 16 times up on banktothefuture.com and paid out hundreds of millions of dividends. And they got a right to all of the billions and dollars of Bitcoins that was later recovered many years later in this year, actually, 2022. So Bitfinex used financial innovation, and really it was comparing those two different stories. And people get this confused as well, because Bitfinex had two disaster recoveries. We did the equity part of that. The second one was when $850 million was seized by the government from one of their banking partners for Tether. And they had to issue $1 billion of a token in order to recover the funds that the government had seized as a result of that. And that was the Leo token. So people get confused. The first recovery for Bitfinex was called the BFX token, and we can go a bit deeper into that. The second one was called the Leo token. They both worked, and they both recovered as a result of it.
Perfect. So let's dive deeper into that, because there's a big distinction between what happened with Mt. Gox. They kind of want to TradFi away, got a bunch of lawyers involved, and now we're 8 years out. 2014 hack, I believe, right? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're coming up on a decade, and we're still in flux. But now we're talking about Bitfinex and how it works. So walk us through those distinctions you just talked about.
Okay, so Mt. Gox went into bankruptcy, went into years and years and years of lawyers, paying lawyers millions, TradFi route, and eventually the price of Bitcoin went up because there was one very fortunate thing, which is that the way that the proceedings worked in Japan meant that they didn't have to sell the Bitcoin. Bitcoin went on a bull market for years and years and years. It was a forced hodl. There was hard forks with Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV and all these other ones. So they were able to sell off some of the hard forks, and they kept the valuable asset, which was Bitcoin. Now, the liquidators played it very well. If you move into bankruptcy proceedings, essentially, you're relying upon TradFi's belief in Bitcoin.
Right.
And traditionally, they are very risk adverse. Now, Japan was the only country in the world that was supporting Bitcoin regulations. It was the highest level of merchant adoption in Bitcoin. And it had a very different mindset, without being stereotypical, but, they have 100-year games plans versus 3 to 5 year game plans.
Yeah.
And that was a stroke of luck that made that work, but it still took 8 years to get the funds back. Okay,
Yeah.
So that was number one. With Bitfinex, they had to move really fast. And this is my original approach to Celsius, and I'll go through what we actually did and how we approached them.
Okay.
You have to move really fast, because the longer you go on, the more FUD comes out, the more bad PR comes out, the more predatory offers comes out, the more the community stop believing in what they originally believed in. So to give you context, from the moment that Bitfinex was hacked, they were immediately the enemy of the world. Everyone was, give me my money back. They were scammers, take them to prison, all of that stuff. But they set about releasing, after 2 weeks, some press around what they were going to do. Within a couple of weeks after that, they executed it. And essentially, every advisor would never have advised them to do what they did, but they decided, we have to find a way or make a way, and they did it. So here's what they did.
Okay.
They realized that, so they took the value of the Bitcoin. 119,000 Bitcoin at the time was valued at $72 million. Now, $72 million compared to hacks that happen today is a reasonably small number, but back then it was a disaster number.
True.
72 million in our industry back in 2016 this is before the ICO boom. This was a big hole, a really big hole. And what they said is that $72 million is the value of what we can't repay. So they opened up, they allowed for trading, they allowed a bunch of people to withdraw and get the rest of their money, and they were haircutted by about 33% of their deposits. What they did is they then issued a token, and that token was called the BFX token.
Okay.
The BFX token was essentially a security. It was a promise to repay $1, and there were 72 million tokens. Those 72 million tokens, you could either sell them on the market if you thought, I want out of this shit, I don't believe Bitfinex, I think they're a bunch of scammers, I'm out. And so you could sell it, and immediately it started trading at about 30 cents on the dollar. But somebody else said, I believe Bitfinex can recover, I'll buy that $1 a debt for 30 cents. And so immediately that's what happened. This is very different to just issuing a token like Luna or something like that. This is a security, it represents a debt. And in accepting that token, you had to agree not to sue Bitfinex. So if you wanted the recovery, then you had to give up your right to sue. And most people accepted the token and decided that that was the route forward.
And it's so hugely important to understand that giving up the right to sue, again, is a huge thing, because on the defense, everybody at Celsius, the board members, Alex Mashinsky, they have to protect. However, in whatever way that looks like, they have to protect from the lawsuits. And obviously that is going to mean money for sure. So you have to protect around the lawsuit. So remember, Simon Dixon is the guy who worked on the recovery plan for Bitfinex. He was the guy that came up with these kind of ideas, and if you will, and the proposals for the recovery. And this was one of those, he's telling you what happened and what he did here. And ultimately these people got three choices. I'm out I'll take my 30 cents, I'm out type deal. So, you know, you get the 30% cut, they open up withdrawals, you're gonna basically get about, right? You're gonna lose just about this amount of money. Or you could take the token option and at 30 cents on the dollar, which I absolutely love. Well, I like the idea. Or you could take the dollar, buy that dollar thing and get equity in the company.
Speculators came along and said, well, I'll buy it up. I believe that Bitfinex has a future, and it became a prediction market for the likelihood of Bitfinex recovering. Now, as this 2017 bull market came along, a stroke of luck came along, Tether started to get traction, Binance was launched, and Binance didn't have any banking facilities, and it used Tether as its pretty much a crypto-to-crypto exchange.
Right.
And Binance became huge because it didn't need to get banking and essentially used Bitfinex and Tether as their bank account, which led to the later issue that arose the second time round. But anyway, Binance grew because of that you know, they didn't need a banking, and Bitfinex and Tether took on that responsibility. The market recovered, they started paying down the debt. They also said, if you want to convert your token, no matter what the price of the token is, even if it's trading at 30 cents, we'll give you $1 of equity at a set valuation in the company. And so we launched a pitch on Bank to the Future, and Bank to the Future is a securities company. And so people were buying tokens at 30 cents and converting them to $1 of equity. So they were getting a 70% discount on the valuation of Bitfinex. Now, as more and more people did this, they were buying it for 30 cents and then converting it to equity at $1. The price of the token started to come up. It went to 40 cents, it went to 50 cents, it went to 60 cents. And more people realized, and then they started repaying more of the debt. And then approximately $50 million, about 55 million, I think the final number was converted into Bitfinex equity at $1, and people could either, you know, buy that at a discount, and they got a deep discount in the valuation of Bitfinex.
Gotcha.
This created that prediction market, allowed people to make their choice between a token, debt, or equity. And then the 55 million that was converted to equity went on the Bank to the Future secondary market. The $1 went up to a price of $16 when it hit at this peak on Bank to the Future. So there was a 16x upside on the equity. And there was also, they took all of their profits from the whole bull market that happened in 2017 and 2018 and paid it out in dividends, which was, you know, to the tune of hundreds of millions.
To the tune of hundreds of millions. For something that you buy at 30 cents and get that discounted rate on the equity. Boy, I hope that comes up. So I want to go over, you want to go to bnktothefuture.co if you are a Celsius. Well, you don't even have to be a Celsius. Well, it says are you or are you not? But I would imagine just for the Celsius holders, it says here, bnktothefuture.co/Celsius, okay? The best way to get there is just to go to the link in the description of Digital Assets News right here. Link to Celsius 3 proposal review. Go right here. Stay away from the phishing scams and all that stuff like that. Make sure when you're checking out this video that you hit the like button for Rob. It's a tremendous interview. But here's what it says here. The positives first. The best recovery plan is the one supported by the community. Look, the sell short squeeze, I get it. But this, my friends, this is the bigger picture in my opinion. And I'm not sure why the people in the sell short squeeze are not promoting this particular video in this particular event. The positives first. The first recovery plan is the one supported by the community. We want to hear from the Celsius community before we call for a Celsius shareholder meeting. Now remember, Bank to the Future had 5%. They have over 5% of equity in Celsius. Okay. Simon Dixon personally holds shares, and he personally has tens and tens of millions of dollars on the platform currently. So he's a depositor. This is your only chance to have your voice heard and participate in the recovery plan with us. We were, this is again, an eye opener for me, but it's, this is the truth. This is them saying it. We were engaged by Celsius to manage the community part of their $750 million Series B funding round. The community part of that, right, where the Celsians get to participate, right? $750 million Series B funding round. During the due diligence process, questions around liquidity and solvency issues arose. Celsius are unable to communicate, and we would like to represent the community with our influence. Bank to the Future Capital and our CEO, Simon Dixon, as both depositors and shareholders, have committed to do what we can within our power to find a solution for the Celsius depositors and shareholders. And I'm going to tell you, Simon goes in a little bit on Alex Mashinsky. He's not holding punches. You want to watch the rest of that interview for sure. He's not holding punches. And he's a partner. They're partners, right? They worked together on funding rounds before, Series A for Celsius. Alex has been on his show, and he has been on, Simon Dixon's been on Alex's show on the AMAs. Bank to the Future Capital and our CEO, Simon Dixon, as both depositors and shareholders, have committed to do what we can within our power to find a good solution for Celsius depositors and shareholders. We have done it before successfully, banked with Bitfinex and with Kraken. We have done it before successfully with other companies, and we can do it again. Celsius was a partner to the Bank to the Future. We are a shareholder, and Simon Dixon was one of their top depositors using a small percentage of his wealth. Tens of millions is a small percentage. To do this successfully, we need the community to make this happen. We have already started working with other companies who have trusted us to assist them on a recovery plan. And we have already spoken with the Celsius board. Let me say that again. We have already started working with other companies who have trusted us to assist them on a recovery plan. And we have already spoken with the Celsius board. I will tell you, let me read this. Bank to the Future Capital, SPC, holds over 5% of Celsius shares. And therefore, we believe that this allows us to call a shareholder meetings as part of our statutory shareholder rights that legally cannot be ignored by the Celsius board. This is our opinion and should not be treated as legal advice. We have 3 proposals. Proposal 1, a restructuring to relaunch Celsius and allow depositors to benefit from any recovery through financial engineering. That is the Bitfinex plan for the most part. This involves risk, and full recovery of funds is not guaranteed. Proposal 2, a pool of the most influential whales in Bitcoin to co-invest with the community. By the way, he was asked about CZ from Binance. And you're going to want to listen to the video, but he essentially said, conversations have been made, things are in motion, but that's all I can say about it. With CZ Binance, conversations have been had or made, moves have been made rather, and that's all I can say about it. We completed a similar disaster recovery offering for Bitfinex in 2016. See case study, proposal 3, an operational plan that allows a new entity and team to rebuild and make depositors whole. This involves risk, and full recovery of funds is not guaranteed. To ensure your opinions are heard, use the following hashtag in all conversations. We have taken the 3 approaches so far. Approach so far? So approach 1, we took a step back and silently gave the strategies to Celsius TradeFi advisors to execute with a timeline on how fast it should happen. Approach 2, we offered to execute it for them externally, but they wanted us to work internally with their team. We believe acting independently is more likely to produce a better result for depositors and shareholders. Finally, we went public, worried that time is running out, and now want to hear from the community before we request our shareholder meetings of Celsius. And down here, just go here, you can put your information in, you can answer the questions, whether you're a shareholder of Celsius, whether you're a member of Celsius, or you're a depositor or whatever. And let your voice be heard. Community recovery, I am certainly for it. I like proposal A, but you do your own due diligence and do your own homework. All right, guys, I got to wrap it up. I'm going to end this video like I do all of my videos. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button. It helps with YouTube and ringing that notification bell. I'm going to end this video like I do all of my videos and remind you guys of this.
Old money doesn't want you to win. They don't want us to win. They would rather that we remain a cog in their perpetual wheel of trading our time for dollars. They don't want us to play in the same playground that they play in, where we allow our money to work for us. This is our chance to win, guys. The digital asset space is our chance to win. We are in the midst of the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of man. Are you participating, or are you standing on the sidelines? Here's what I do know, that the battle for you has already been fought, and the victory is yours. Go get it.